This video is documenting the prediction that the San Francisco 49ers will win this year's Super Bowl that will be played in San Francisco on February 8th, 2026. The date that this video is posted on the social media platform you are watching it on proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Welcome. It is predicted that the San Francisco 49ers will win the Super Bowl this year in 2026, Super Bowl 60, which will be played in San Francisco. It has been known for over a year that the San Francisco 49ers would win Super Bowl 60. In other words, this has been known prior to last year's Super Bowl. I am just getting around to documenting this now. As we can see here, this email that I'm about to read, explaining how, or the reasons how it is known that the San Francisco 49ers will win this year's Super Bowl, was composed on December 28th. This is before the beginning of the playoffs. In fact, this is before the second last game of the season. At the time of this email composition here, the San Francisco 49ers betting odds in Las Vegas are 15-1. That's not that impressive. The skeptic will say, well, you have therefore a 1 in 15 chance to be correct with this prediction. Fair enough. At one point in the season, the 49ers were 40-1. And like I said, this prediction has been known for over a year. Okay, now, that's one thing. To dismiss this because, well, it's only 15-1, and therefore it's not supernatural. It's not proof, in other words, for the God of the Bible. Okay? And fair enough. The skeptic is welcome to have entitled to that conclusion. But once the reasons for how this prediction is known are explained, that conclusion is not any longer at all rational. Because as I will demonstrate, these reasons are so exceedingly clear and so profound. The only possible way that these reasons could have come about is through God. In other words, no human being is creative enough or imaginative enough to concoct these reasons in their own mind. You will see this. This will be very, very clear. Okay? The reason for making this video is not for entertainment, which it would be if the odds were simply 15-1. Once I have explained the reasons for how this is known, that will make sense and be overwhelmingly clear, the rational person will conclude that the odds are infinity to 1 that this prediction will come to pass. In other words, I cannot explain these reasons and by coincidence the San Francisco 49ers win the Super Bowl. That isn't rational. You will see. Bear with me. You will see this once I've read the explanations for how this is known ahead of time. Because the reasons are overwhelming and they're very clear. You will see. And once this has been explained, you are a fool to conclude anything other than the God of the Bible being the true God. the righteous Christian God of the Bible. Many people on earth have different interpretations of what or who God is. But this will be proof. The purpose of this video that is from the righteous Christian God of the Bible. The purpose of this prediction that is from the righteous Christian God of the Bible is to prove that he is the truth and that the Bible is the inspired word of God. You will see this. Bear with me, okay? And to reach any other conclusion other than this, in other words, to still maintain, well, you just got lucky, makes you a fool. Go ahead and be a fool if you want to. You'll be even a bigger fool than you already were. And yes, you are a fool already if you do not understand that there is a God. Agnostic atheism is fairy tales for adults. And only fools believe that. Worldview, because it is a worldview, and worldviews are religions. And agnostic atheism is, in fact, a religion. I'll just elaborate that quickly, and then we'll move on to the explanations here. Agnostic atheism is a religion, and it is a dogmatic religion with devout, fundamentalist, extremist followers, which is the majority of people in Western culture, Western civilization today, especially outside of the Bible Belt. For example, in a country like Canada, where there are essentially no Christians any longer. So this is the dominant religion, in other words, of the West today. And every religion, every worldview has a core fundamental belief. The core belief of a particular religion is the foundation of the religion. It's all centered on the one belief. The core belief of the Christian religion is that there is a personal being, God, that created the creation. The core belief of the New Age or Hindu or Buddhist or Eastern religion is that God is an impersonal being and an impersonal energy and is the creation itself. Obviously, these two worldviews are diametrically opposed to each other, and both cannot be true. Contrary to the belief of many confused Westerners today who have attempted in their own mind to conflate the personal being God with the impersonal energy God of the Eastern Hindu religion. That said, there is a core belief of the agnostic atheist religion, and that core belief is that there is no evidence for God. Despite that being not true, and obviously so, and overwhelmingly untrue, the evidence for God is overwhelming is not the correct word. It's not the correct adjective for it. And of course, if there were a God, there would be evidence, because there is a reason why he partially hides himself. And it's a very good reason, to give the opportunity for the creature to choose him or not. Free will. Okay? But the evidence for anyone who cares is overwhelming, and it's obvious. It's apparent to anyone alive, including prior to the existence of the Bible, that there is a creator. All right? That said, I'm not going to elaborate anymore on the evidence for a creator, but just to say that agnostic atheism is a religion, and the core fundamental belief that the extremist, radical, or rather fundamentalist followers follow religiously is that there is no evidence for God. And it's not true. And anyway, so the agnostic atheist religion is, well, there's no evidence for God. There might be a God, but there is no evidence for God. And that's that. And I'll find out when I die what happens, if there is or there isn't, because there is no evidence. But that's this core belief of Western civilization today. And it is simply untrue. Even modern, not even modern, but 20th century science. This is, in other words, this agnostic, atheist, materialist worldview came about in the 1800s. But even science in the 20th century, in the 1900s, overwhelmingly proves that there is an intelligent designer to the universe. Okay, but they're unaware of that because of the propaganda in the media and the suppression of this information from atheist scientists and the culture. Because the culture in general does not want there to be a God. Because why? They don't want to be accountable psychologically to a judgment and a judge. They're so into their personal lifestyle of choice and freedom from thinking of this sort of thing. The idea that they would want to pray to God every morning is icky for them, and so they do not want there to be a God, and that's why the agnostic atheist religion is so successful in our culture today. Now, what I'm getting at here, though, is that this prediction will be in your face proof for the righteous Christian God of the Bible. And there really is no intellectual excuse for dismissing this once you have heard the reasons for how this prediction is known. Okay, so let's get into it. This email is documenting the prediction that the San Francisco 49ers will win Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco, in the San Francisco Bay Area on February 8th, 2026. This prediction is being made prior to the end of the season, at the beginning, and prior to the beginning of the playoffs. Currently, the 49ers are tied for second place in their division, and there are 8 divisions. However, it has been known with certainty that the 49ers will win Super Bowl 60 for over a year. The prediction that the San Francisco 49ers will become the third team in NFL history to have won 6 Super Bowls. Okay? I'll read that again. This prediction is that the San Francisco 49ers will become the third team in NFL history to have won 6 Super Bowls. This hints at the number that is associated with the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, 666. Right? Most people know this, even those that aren't religious or Christian, that 666 is associated with Satan and the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. And so that's what the third team in NFL history winning 6 Super Bowls symbolizes or hints at. It's 3 sixes. Okay? The third team in history to win 6 Super Bowls hints at 3 sixes and 666. The name San Francisco in God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. I should say, the name San Francisco in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, hints at Pope Francis, as in San Francisco. The Antichrist is Pope Francis, who will be resurrected from the dead through demonic power in April of 2029. That, of course, is another prediction. You will know that this will happen when this prediction for the Super Bowl comes to pass. Super Bowl 60 will be played in Santa Clara, California. It will be played in Levi's Stadium, the home stadium of the San Francisco 49ers. In winning Super Bowl 60, the San Francisco 49ers will become the third team in NFL history to win the Super Bowl in their home stadium. This is another hint at 3 sixes and 666. I'll repeat that. When the 49ers from San Francisco win Super Bowl 60, they will become the third team in NFL history to win the Super Bowl in their home stadium. That's another 3 sixes. That's in addition to them being the third team in NFL history to win 6 Super Bowls. The third team to win in their home stadium, and it's Super Bowl 60, gives us another 3 sixes and 666. Furthermore, again, it is San Francisco winning in San Francisco, which hints at the Antichrist, Pope Francis, whose number is 666. In playing in Super Bowl 60, the San Francisco 49ers will have played in their third Super Bowl in 6 years. The 49ers played in the 2020 Super Bowl and the 2024 Super Bowl. 3 Super Bowls played in 6 years also hints at 3 sixes and 666. So here you have 3 ways in which this win will give us 3 sixes. This number that is associated with the Antichrist, Pope Francis. All right, now I'm just getting started, but this is enough. This is enough explanation. This, in conjunction with the 49ers actually winning, makes this so that it cannot be coincidence. Like I said, no human being is capable of being creative enough to recognize these 3 ways in which this will hint at 3 sixes ahead of time. No one would be anticipating, first of all, the 49ers winning this Super Bowl and therefore then looking back to see if there's this sort of confirmation and then just happen to discovering these 3 ways in which this will hint at 3 sixes. It takes wisdom, first of all, but recognition from prior signs in God's big picture of signs, his true big picture of signs, which will be proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass, that San Francisco hints at Pope Francis. And I've left the other watchers, so-called, in the dust, who are still playing the Antichrist guessing game because of their lack of understanding of Bible prophecy, which is overwhelmingly clear that the Antichrist is a pope. And from God's signs, it was more than clear for many years that it would be Pope Francis. This is how it had to be deduced that he would therefore be resurrected. Since that conclusion came about, the signs in God's big picture of signs have overwhelmingly confirmed that this will happen. And not only that, it has also indicated when this will happen, which will be in April of 2029. Like I said, God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. And this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections will be proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass. And this is the purpose of this prediction that is from God. This is the purpose of this video and video channel. It is to prove that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections being explained on this channel. And believe me, I know far better than you or anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. And more than that, it is to prove the controversial things that I am saying. Make no mistake. Again, I know more than you. I know more than you. The reason and purpose for this prediction. And it is to prove all of the controversial things that I am saying in these videos. There is no debate on these controversial things when this prediction comes to pass. In other words, Pope Francis is the Antichrist. Not only that, he's the first of the 2 Antichrists, for those who know what I'm talking about. Not the second, the first. And it is then, therefore, time to stop playing the Antichrist guessing game that evangelicals love to play because of their heretical false interpretation of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, based on their heretical salvation or soteriological doctrine of sovereign grace or free grace, etc., once saved, always saved, which has them interpret the he and the what that Paul is mentioning as being the Holy Spirit. Why in the world would he refer to the Holy Spirit as a he and the what? Furthermore, why did he speak cryptically to the Thessalonians, who he said knew what he was talking about? The reason is because anyone in possession of the letter would have been in danger, because he was speaking of Rome and Emperor Constantine, who was the he, Rome being the what, which was moved, the capital of the empire, to Constantinople, leading the way, paving the way, clearing the way for the rise of the bishops of Rome to gain power and then therefore ultimately rule over the so-called Roman Catholic Empire. So in other words, Paul was clearly identifying the Antichrist in that prophecy. That's not even scratching the surface of the prophecies in the Bible that everyone that claims to be interested in prophecy should understand and know. I'll say this too, there wouldn't have been a Protestant Reformation in the first place had there not been this knowledge that the Pope is the Antichrist. Even that in itself has been lost conveniently in the last 50 years, just prior to the end times, so that as many people as possible can be fooled, including Protestants, quote-unquote Christians. All right, now, like I said, I'm just getting started here. The last Super Bowl that the San Francisco 49ers played in was the first ever Super Bowl, and God uses firsts and lasts for prophetic signs in general. So the last Super Bowl that the San Francisco 49ers played in was the first ever Super Bowl to be played in the 36th state of Nevada, in Sin City. One of the names for the Antichrist in Bible prophecy is the man of sin, which is hinted at with this Super Bowl involving the San Francisco 49ers in Sin City. But Las Vegas is in the 36th state, and 36 hints at 3 sixes. 36 is also 6 times 6, and it is also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th triangular number is 666, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, all the way up to 36, equals 666. The Super Bowl in the 6 times 6th state hinted at the San Francisco 49ers winning their 6th Super Bowl in Super Bowl 60. This is another 3 sixes. Their last Super Bowl played before this one that they will win, which will be their 6th Super Bowl in NFL history, in their history, in Super Bowl 60, which gives us, or hints at, 6 and 6, which is what the 36th state hints at, 6 times 6. This is amazing. Now we have 4 ways in which this win for the San Francisco 49ers will give us 3 sixes. And that is, again, because God is identifying the Antichrist, which he has done many millennia ago in Old Testament prophecy. But specifically, it's Pope Francis. All popes in all of history, all throughout history, have been lowercase a Antichrist. Let me say that again. All popes throughout all of history have been lowercase a Antichrists. The office of papacy is blasphemy, and it is Antichrist. That's another subject which I talk about in other videos. Probably should go into it at length in this video again, given the subject of this video. So why don't I just say a couple of things. The entire Catholic religion, so Catholicism is more than the Bible. It is man-made religion on top of the Bible, which is blasphemy. Man in the Bible, for those that understand the Bible, which Catholics in general do not understand. Catholics in general never, ever even read the Bible There were many centuries in which they were forbidden to read the Bible, and there is now still a culture of, if they have a question, they go to the priest because only priests supposedly can understand the Bible, etc. It's terrible. It's evil. Furthermore, Jesus said to not call anyone father or teacher, which is, of course, what priests are. He didn't just say don't do it. He said he forbid it, because there is only one teacher, Jesus, which is why John said, for example, in his writings in the Bible, so you do not need a teacher because you have the Holy Spirit. And we also have the canon, the Bible. But anyway, so Catholicism is obviously, for anyone that's a thinker at all, with like a modicum of thought, knows, because, I say that laughing, mockingly, because there are many people that don't think at all. Like they don't even know their own religion if they're a quote-unquote Catholic. But anyway, Catholicism is a whole bunch of man-made stuff on top of the Bible. And they think that's perfectly fine and that's okay. Because in their minds, supposedly, popes are descendants of Peter and Jesus, and they think that Jesus told Peter that he would build his church on Peter. The entire, and I mean this literally, listen, pay attention, listen closely. The entire Catholic religion hinges on one passage in the Bible, Matthew 16:18. Listen carefully, Protestants and Catholics, because if you are a Protestant, this is the way you tell a Catholic that their religion is false. Because again, the entire Catholic religion hinges on one passage. If this passage is proven to be not true, it disproves the entire religion, which is not a legitimate denomination of Christianity. Before I explain this passage, I'll also say this. The thing that God hates the most in the Bible, for anyone that knows the Bible, knows that this is true, and Catholics don't know the Bible, but the thing that God hates the most in the Bible is true religion mixed with false religion. God was constantly chastising the Jews in ancient Israel for mixing their true religion with the pagan religion of their neighbors. Ultimately, the Jews were exiled for this to Babylon, which is why the name Babylon is synonymous as a metaphor for pagan religion. That's why Peter, in his writings in the Bible, referred to Rome as Babylon. There's absolutely zero evidence that Peter was ever in Rome. He was not in Rome. He had no reason to go to Rome. He was the head of the church of the Jews in Jerusalem. Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. Paul went to Rome. Peter did not go to Rome, and there's no evidence for that. It's a man-made tradition made in order to, what? To support the authority, the corrupt authority of these men at the top of the hierarchy of the Catholic religion. And that's the difference, what was supposed to be anyway, the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism is the abolishing of this hierarchy. But unfortunately, not much has changed within Protestant culture, and today they worship even pretty much the same way as Catholics. A man steps behind a stage, speaks for 45 minutes, collects money, gets paid for it. Jesus forbid it. Paul forbid it too. Passages that are twisted out of context, that the pastors claim to support their being paid, are not true. If anything, Paul was talking about preaching for money, but it wasn't in the context of what they do, which is reside in the location that they're in and charge money on a weekly basis for standing and talking, and also limiting 100% the information flow in the body of Christ, cutting off the members of the body, and which is why Paul said, if a man has something to say while one other one is speaking, let the one who is speaking be silent. If you were to do that today, you'd be immediately escorted out of the church and asked never to return, because they are dictators and they're basically popes, but just in a smaller format. And they still sit in rows and they still face the pope, the pastor, in other words, the pope, for the hour that the guy is speaking, the alpha male of the group, who gets paid. Anyway, What was I saying? Yes, so the thing that God hates the most is mixing the false religion with the true religion. They were exiled to Babylon for it, and today Roman Catholicism is exactly this. When Rome converted to Catholicism or to Christianity, so-called Christianity, it did not do away with its ancient pagan religion. It just repackaged it and made it look like Christianity. It's the same thing they did when Roman Catholics conquered other indigenous people in the New World, for example, which is why you have these bizarre traditions in places, even like Poland, for example, even in Eastern Europe, they got these crazy, bizarre traditions that are inherited from their ancient pagan traditions, repackaged into supposedly a Catholic format. Well, the same thing happened in Rome, which is just, for example, I'll give you one example. The Pope's weird hat that he wears, you know, that spiky hat, the tall hat. If you look at it from the side, it's a fish head, which is why it has the two tails coming down from the back, on the back of it. And that's inherited. And by the way, when he wears that hat, he also carries that twisted staff that has the morbid carving of Jesus on the cross on it. Anyway, that staff and that hat and all that, that's all passed down from the worship of the god Dagon. The priests of the god Dagon wore the same outfit and wore the same hat and carried the same staff. Okay, that's a fact. I mean, that's not like a conspiracy theory. What, you think that's part of Christianity? Where did that come from? Obviously, it didn't come from anything in the Bible. So what do you think? Where did something as ridiculous as that come from? It's inherited from the worship of the fish god, the god of Dagon. Why did they worship the fish god? Well, that's inherited from this ancient pagan association of the clitoris with fertility, which is shaped like a fish. I mean, sorry to be crass, but that's where it comes from. And that's pagan religion for you. Oh, and I'll give you another example. Speaking of the fertility worship, that's exactly what St. Peter's Square is all about, with the big phallus symbol in the middle. That, what do they call that? You know, that pointy, tall thing, the obelisk in the middle, and it's surrounded by a circular columns. The columns are in a circle around the phallus. Well, that's the male and female. The circular symbolizes the vagina, and the obelisk is a phallus symbol. It's fertility worship right in St. Peter's Square. That's why the dome on top of St. Peter's Basilica, it's more fertility goddess worship. Okay, that's enough. Now, the San Francisco 49ers are predicted to play in their third Super Bowl in 6 years. Their first Super Bowl of these three Super Bowls was Super Bowl 54. The inverse 6 years ago, prior to Super Bowl 60. The inverse of 54, in other words, 1 divided by 54, is 0.0185185 into infinity. And God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, which is why, for example, 666. Because man was created on the 6th day, and that's why the Antichrist's number, man, is 666. And with time, man becomes more and more corrupt, which is why the Catholic Church has become more and more corrupt with time. To the point where it's no longer lowercase a antichrists, but uppercase, capital A Antichrist, Pope Francis. All right, so anyway, 185, which is what we get from this 54 number. Again, the number 185 is hidden within the number 54. And 185 is the 60th semi-prime number. A number that is only divisible by 2 other prime numbers, which God uses for confirming signs. In other words, Super Bowl 50, involving the San Francisco 49ers, hinted at the San Francisco 49ers winning Super Bowl 60. Right? Super Bowl 54 hinted at the number 60, as I just explained. And San Francisco played in that Super Bowl. And that's why it was hinting at ultimately the third of the 3 Super Bowls in 6 years, when they will win Super Bowl 60. The in-between one, they would also lose. The first one of the 3 to be won will be the 60th one, Super Bowl 60. The third of the 3 Super Bowls in 6 years. Super Bowl 54 was played on the date February 2nd, 2020. That's 2-2-2, 0. 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6. And this also hinted at the San Francisco 49ers winning their 6th Super Bowl 6 years later in Super Bowl 60. By the way, that's another 3 sixes. Their 6th Super Bowl win 6 years later in Super Bowl 60, after the Super Bowl that hinted at the number 60, that's another 3 sixes. The Super Bowl on February 2nd, 2020, the date 2220, it is known for the big game-changing play in which the ball was thrown from the Chiefs' 22-yard line and was caught on the 49ers' 22-yard line. Okay, and that was on the date 2-2 in the year 20. The big play of the game, in other words, the game was actually famous for this play, the game-changing play. The media talked about this big time after the game in detail, like what went behind the decision and the preparation for this trick play and all this big play. The play was from the ball thrown from the 22-yard line and then was caught on the other 22-yard line, the 49ers' 22-yard line. So that's a bunch of 22s, and it was on the date 2-2 in the year 20. The Super Bowl on 2-2 in 20 was also known for Coach Andy Reid, head coach of the Chiefs, winning his first Super Bowl with his 222nd win in the NFL. And God uses firsts in general for prophetic signs. And so this veteran coach's first Super Bowl win came with his 222nd win in the NFL. And it was on the date 2-2 in 20, and the big play of the game, which he coached, was from the 22-yard line to the other 22-yard line. And again, 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6. This hinted at the San Francisco 49ers winning their 6th Super Bowl 6 years later in Super Bowl 60. Super Bowl 54 is exactly 6 years and 6 days before Super Bowl 60. This is another 3 sixes. So we're up to like 5 or 6 3 sixes here. I think we're up to 5, okay? This is the 5th 3 sixes. 6 years and 6 days to Super Bowl 60 from the other Super Bowl involving the San Francisco 49ers, the first of the 3 in 6 years. Okay, now this 6 years and 6 days is also 66 plus 6 months and 6 days. And that is, of course, another 3 sixes. It's actually 4 sixes. By the way, 4 sixes is also prophetic too. In Bible prophecy, the Roman Empire is the 4th beast, and the beast's number is 666 in Bible prophecy. Okay, so the San Francisco 49ers are predicted to play in Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco exactly 49 days. Okay, I should say the San Francisco 49ers are predicted to play the Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco exactly 49 days after power was restored to about 1/3 of San Francisco after a massive power outage. By the way, I forgot to include here, the number 666, the beast, Pope Francis says the Antichrist, is in Revelation chapter 13, and the power was out for 130,000 customers in San Francisco. Okay, but this is amazing. Again, because this Super Bowl will be played in San Francisco. It'll be won by the 49ers from San Francisco, and it'll be 49 days after power was restored to San Francisco. And that was the top news story of the day, domestically. Pope Francis died at the age of 88. The power was restored on Hanukkah Day 8 in the Jewish calendar. And the power outage is attributed to a fire at a substation on 8th Street, which gives us 8/8 and Pope Francis and his age at the time of his death. In other words, this fire and power outage in San Francisco pointed to Pope Francis. And again, it was 49 days before the 49ers are predicted to win in San Francisco. Do you think that it's possible for someone to create this, just happen to come across this and realize this connection here and all this on their own? Do you really, in addition to all of what I've explained already, do you really believe that that's a coincidence? Okay? Don't be the fool. The last verse of the most central prophecy in the Bible describes the period of the Roman who is the Antichrist. And that's literally the case. Okay, I'm talking about Daniel chapter 9, in which it says that the Antichrist is the prince of the people who are to come that will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, the Romans came and destroyed the city and the sanctuary in 70 AD. Prince in the Bible doesn't refer to the son of a king. It means a ruler. The prince who is to come, who is the descendant of the people who will come and destroy the city and the sanctuary, is a leader of Rome. And emperors in history ultimately became popes. The first emperor was a pope. The first pope was an emperor, sorry. Okay, no, they weren't descended from Peter. No. They're the leaders of Rome. And when Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople, the bishops of Rome filled the vacuum of power, which led to popes. It's clear. This is Old Testament prophecy, and it's more than clear. If you aren't a believer in the Bible, well, I'll just give you a rundown. That prophecy, which is why I call it the most central prophecy in the Bible, because it has so much, it explains all of Christianity, from the Star of Bethlehem and everything. Because the Archangel Gabriel gave Daniel the exact timing of the arrival of the Christ, which is how the wise men understood to come from where they were, the Far East, to travel to worship a Jewish king in Israel. Okay, so the prophecy is that from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem and its walls, and the only one of the 4 decrees to rebuild Jerusalem that includes the rebuilding of walls, is in Nehemiah chapter 2. And that date, there's a date for the decree, the 1st of Nisan, in 445 BC, because it was, I believe, the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, which we know to be 445 BC. Furthermore, we know it's 445 BC because of what I'm explaining. But from that decree on Nisan 1, the Royal British Observatory confirms that Nisan 1 in that year was March 14th, 445 BC. And then the prophecy says to add 69 sevens. But the word 7 in the text is in Hebrew, Shabua, which doesn't mean 7 days, like a week. So when it speaks of 69 sevens, it doesn't mean 69 weeks. First of all, for one thing, that wasn't enough time to rebuild Jerusalem and its walls. But, so in Hebrew, the word Shabua simply means a unit of 7. If we go 69 times 7 years, we get the profound result that's indisputable. 69 times 7 years is 490 years. Sorry, 483 years. All right, now in Bible prophecy, 360-day years, 12 months of 30 days, 12 months of 30 days each, are used in Bible prophecy. I could give you the other examples, but whatever. I want to make this short. So 483 times 360, I believe, is 173,800 days. If I'm not correct, whatever. Let me just double check. It's 173,880 days. Again, it's 69 times 7, 483 times 360 days. 173,880 days. Okay, and then and Gabriel then says that once this, so after the decree, we add 173,880 days, and that will be that the Messiah will come and will be put to death. And then will be put to death. That's what the prophecy says. It's astounding that the Jews don't recognize that Christ is the Messiah, given that alone, that it clearly says that the Messiah will be put to death once he arrives. Well, anyway, when we add 173,880 days, we get April 8th, 32 AD, which according to the Royal British Observatory was the Sunday before the full moon Passover in 32 AD. Okay, and Jesus was crucified on the Passover. But the Sunday before it is known in Christianity as Palm Sunday. Now, the Gospel of Luke tells us that Jesus began his ministry of teaching and healing people in the 14th year of Tiberius, and Tiberius began his reign in 15 AD. Or maybe it's the other way around. 15th year of Tiberius, and Tiberius began his reign in 14 AD. So anyway, 14 plus 15 is 29. We know clearly from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 3, that Jesus' ministry began in 29 AD. The Gospel of John records Jesus observing 4 Passovers and being crucified on the 4th one. So 29, 30, 31, 32. Jesus was crucified on the Passover in 32 AD. It's clear as day from all that I've explained. And for those that, for whatever reason, they really, love the year 30 or 31 or 33 or whatever, all of those years are impossible, because the only one of those years that has an extra month of Adar, for those that know what I'm talking about, is 32 AD. And we know that there requires to be 5,888 moons. There needs to be an extra month of Adar in the year of Jesus' crucifixion. Okay? And so 32 AD is the year from the 3 different ways that I just said. But getting back to the prophecy, that's astounding that Daniel chapter 9 gave the exact number of days until the arrival of the Christ. Because that's what it says. The Messiah, which is what Christ means in Greek, would arrive after this period of time. 69 times 7 times 360 days. And it's exact. It was exactly the day. Okay? And then the prophecy goes on to say that a period of desolations are declared after the Messiah is put to death. And that's because when the Jews rejected Jesus, God dispersed the Jews around the world and made the land desolate until Mark Twain came back and wrote in his first book that made him famous of his travels around the world that God must have cursed this land, it's so desolate. This was before any immigration back to the area known as Palestine. That was in 1967. Mark Twain wrote that. And Mark Twain was born and died on the day of visible comets in the night sky. And Genesis 1:14 tells us that signs and the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs. So Mark Twain was, in other words, his real name is Samuel Clemens, and Clemens means mercy. And God showed his mercy because right after Clemens visited Israel, the Jews started coming back. The first settlement was just a few years after that, the first Jewish settlement, and in the land that was desolate. The God used Mark Twain as the stranger from the faraway land because Deuteronomy chapter 28 says that God is going to make the land desolate, and then when the time comes, he will send the stranger from the faraway land to be the witness. So that's why Mark Twain is the witness recording how the land was desolate before the Jews started coming back, before they started making the land not desolate anymore and making it, for one thing, an agricultural paradise through their innovation and technology. Because prior to that, it was wasteland and Tel Aviv was a swamp, uninhabited, with absentee landlords in Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. The Jews started buying up the deeds to the land. The extremely poor neighboring Arabs in Egypt and surrounding nations came for opportunity because of the opportunity that was being created by the Jews. But then they ended up, of course, having many more children than them. And then ultimately, by the time of 1948, you have a clash between the two religions that ends in war. But Yasser Arafat's parents were born in Yasser Arafat, the supposed leader of the quote-unquote Palestinian people, was born in Cairo. In other words, there's no such thing as Palestinian people. There was no people there. There's no Palestinian people. The word Palestine comes from the emperor who first exiled the Jews in the 2nd century. Wanted to eliminate Judaism from the land because the Jews couldn't be occupied. So that's why they were taken as slaves and dispersed throughout the empire. But it was ultimately judgment from God. Anyway, the land was then renamed Palestina, which comes from the ancient Philistines, which were the sea peoples that arrived before the Jews came in after they came out of Egypt. That's where the word Palestine comes from. There's no Palestinian people. They're all Arabs. And they left the land upon the admission of the neighboring Arab nations in the war. They were told, just leave temporarily, we're going to wipe out the Jews. But then the Jews, and it was a true miracle, won that war, and then they were left outside the land. But they didn't start creating, they weren't there. This whole colonialism thing is a lie from Satan. The Arabs came to take advantage of opportunity that the Jews were creating in the land, which wasn't there prior to that. Okay, and anyway, and then, well, of course, you've got subsequent waves of Aliyah, where thousands and thousands, I think 1 million Jews were forced to leave the neighboring Arab nations in an emergency, in a crisis, and flee to Israel. You never hear about that when you hear the other side talk about how bad Israel is and how the Jews are colonialists. You never hear also, furthermore, how 20% of Israel is Arab with full citizen rights, getting along and playing in sports with their Jewish neighbors and active in parliament, etc. You never hear about that either. But so Arabs are full citizens and there are even Arabs that are members of the Israeli Defense Force. Yet Jews cannot at all live in the neighboring nations. So when do you ever hear about that, right? It's all a lie. It's all propaganda from Satan to fool those who are with Satan, who choose Satan, who choose lies, who choose to believe propaganda from the system that is a lie, which tells you that there's no evidence for God, for example. Agnostic atheism, secularism. It's all from Satan. The secular progressive left. Why is it? Is it a coincidence that they're pro-Palestinian when it's a lie? I mean, all of it. All of it's a lie, right? All right, so I got off onto a tangent. I guess it's kind of relevant to this video, because Pope Francis and Barack Obama will be, the two antichrists, will be leading an effort to make Jerusalem an international city. Rome has always wanted to relocate its capital to Jerusalem, and they will be on the Temple Mount and all of that, as Bible prophecy says. So anyway, speaking of that, that's this verse, Daniel chapter 9:27, which regards the Temple Mount and the Antichrist. So this verse is Daniel 9:27. So as I was saying, there was this period of desolations after the Christ arrives. That's the 2,000 years of desolation, which ended with Mark Twain being the witness from the faraway land. Oh, and speaking of that, Mark Twain was from San Francisco, because we're talking about San Francisco in this video. And we're talking about Pope Francis. And Pope Francis will be on the Temple Mount. I just realized that. Wow. I think I realized that before, but forgot. But the witness from the faraway land is actually also hinting at Pope Francis. Now, San Francisco at the time, before the age of airplanes, was the furthest you could possibly get from Israel. And it says the stranger will come from the faraway land. I don't know how Mark Twain got to Israel. He either took a boat around South America, or he traveled by wagon at some point, because that was before the Transcontinental Railroad. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong about that. No. Yes, I think that's the case. Or it was right around the time anyway. Who knows? Anyway, so he comes from the faraway land. That's Mark Twain for you. The most famous American writer in history, arguably. One of them anyway. So what I was saying is that, so you have the period of desolations, and then you have the last verse of this most central prophecy, Daniel 9:27, which speaks of the Antichrist on the Temple Mount in the end times, okay? Now, Pope Francis died exactly 9 times 27 days before the power outage in San Francisco. I should say Pope Francis, the Antichrist in Daniel 9:27, died 9 times 27 days before the power outage, the prophetic power outage in San Francisco. In the prophecy in Daniel 9, chapter 9, the Roman Antichrist is described as the prince, as I mentioned. Pope Francis died in Rome exactly 9 years after the death of the musician named Prince. The death of Pope Francis exactly 9 years after the death of Prince identifies Pope Francis as the prince in Daniel chapter 9. The 49ers play in San Francisco. The San Francisco 49ers are predicted to play in the Super Bowl in San Francisco exactly 49 days after power was restored in San Francisco during the Festival of Hanukkah. And the Festival of Hanukkah, by the way, is associated with the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's the rededication of the Temple Festival. 49 is 7 times 7. The San Francisco 49ers, as in 7 times 7, are predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco exactly 7 times 7 days after power was restored in San Francisco. The power outage began on Hanukkah Day 7. This was December 20th, 2025, exactly 7 plus 7 years after the infamous power outage at Candlestick Park in San Francisco during a nationally televised Monday Night Football game involving the San Francisco 49ers, as in 7 times 7, on the eve of Hanukkah. The Festival of Hanukkah is centered on the lighting of the candlestick menorah that has 7 candles, which God hinted at with the name Candlestick Park. Hence the power outage in Candlestick Park on the eve of Hanukkah. Because prior to Hanukkah, the 7-candle menorah is not lit, as in power outage. The power in Candlestick Park went out twice during the game involving the quarterback, number 7, for Pittsburgh. By the way, the power outage going out twice hinted at the second coming of Christ, because tradition has been passed down through the Jews that after Jesus' death, the menorah in the temple would no longer stay lit. It would continually be blown out, even after repeated attempts to relight the candles on the menorah. It was one of these supernatural things that the Jews couldn't understand. They attribute it to God indicating judgment coming for the temple, which did happen in 70 AD with the Romans, but they failed to recognize that it began happening after they crucified Christ. And by the way, speaking of that Deuteronomy chapter 28 passage, this is God speaking to the Jews before they entered the promised land, Israel, after they had been brought out of Egypt. And God gave them promises of blessings and curses. And he said that in the future, they would eventually reject him. And then God would chase them around the world by the sword, which is literally what happened over the last 2,000 years. The Jews have been chased around the world by the sword, and when they returned to Israel, it was from almost 100 countries. Which is why God said that he would exile them to the four corners of the earth, which is why he wasn't talking about the exile to Babylon, which is what those who claim that the church replaced Israel and uses this to explain all of these clear passages regarding the final restoration of Israel at the end of the age. The word Israel is mentioned 79 times in Bible prophecy, and not in one instance does it refer to the church. Anyway, so that's why the power went out twice in this prophetic nationally not televised Monday night football game in Candlestick Park in San Francisco on the eve of Hanukkah. And again, it was 7 plus 7 years before the other power outage in San Francisco that just happened on Hanukkah day 7. And the 49ers are 7 times 7. And this power outage that just happened is 7 times 7 days before this Super Bowl that the 49ers are predicted to win. But also during this game, that was 7 plus 7 years before this power outage in San Francisco, that was also on the eve of Hanukkah in Candlestick Park, and Hanukkah is about the candlestick menorah and lighting the candles as in power outage. Oh, you know what the power going out twice also hints at? It hints at this second power outage in San Francisco 7 plus 7 years later. Yes, wow. Okay. Well, anyway, in the game against Pittsburgh, it was famous quarterback number 7 leading Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh is relevant because of the bottomless pit that will be opened with a key, as described in Bible prophecy. And the Vatican is symbolized by a key. The symbol for Vatican is the keys. Oh, you know what I just remembered? I didn't explain Matthew 16:18 yet. So, might as well do it now. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt the flow of what I'm saying here too. Well, no, I'm just going to continue with this and then get back to that. Okay. So anyway, Pittsburgh, the bottomless pit, number 7, okay? Now, his name is Big Ben. There's a name for the leader of the demons that come out of the bottomless pit. King Apollyon. Now, the backup quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers at the time during this game was the famous Colin Kaepernick, who also wore number 7. So we have two famous number 7s quarterbacks in this football game in which the power went out involving the 49ers as in 7 times 7, 7 plus 7 years exactly before the other power outage in San Francisco. And the power went out twice in Candlestick Park. And that day, this also on Hanukkah, is 7 times 7 days to the predicted win of the 49ers. Okay, just repeating myself. Now, Colin Kaepernick is the founder, if you will, the originator of the kneeling protests, which became the symbolic thing to do during the Antichrist Black Lives Matter protests. Spirit of Antichrist. Spirit of the devil. Spirit of Satan. Those that were involved in the Black Lives Matter protests, I do not care if you call yourself a quote-unquote Christian. You participated with the devil. I highly doubt that you are a quote-unquote Christian, but it is not for me to determine that. There's something very wrong with you if you were participating that. You do not understand what's going on spiritually. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh, but I don't think so. I think it's it's a cause for extreme concern. Now, because there's no such thing as a leftist Christian. It's an oxymoron, okay? Especially in the year, 2020. And if you don't know that, well, that's the subject for another video, okay? Like, you need help. Get some help. I don't know how to tell you what to do, but you are, anyway, I think I've said what I need to say there. So we have Colin Kaepernick here, who is emblematic of the spirit of Antichrist. He wears number 7. He was in this game, although as a backup quarterback, but he would go on to play starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, as in 7 times 7, in the Super Bowl 2 years. Another reason why the power went out twice in Candlestick Park, because Colin Kaepernick would be leading the team in the Super Bowl 2 years later, in the Super Bowl that is known as the Blackout Bowl, because of the power outage in the stadium during the Super Bowl. Just like the power went out in Candlestick Park Stadium 2 years later involving Colin Kaepernick. Now, the power outage in Candlestick Park in San Francisco was exactly the 7th super prime number of weeks. In other words, 59 weeks. Because 59 is the 17th prime number, and 17 is the 7th prime number. So 59 is the 7th super prime number. It's basically a way for God to give another 7. So the power outage in the Candlestick Park in San Francisco was involving the two quarterbacks number 7, was exactly the 7th super prime number of weeks before the Blackout Bowl, before the Blackout Bowl Super Bowl, involving the San Francisco 49ers, as in 7 times 7, led by quarterback number 7. That's amazing. That confirms the connection, the relevance of the Blackout Bowl and the Candlestick Park blackout. The Blackout Bowl Super Bowl in 2013, involving the San Francisco 49ers, as in 7 times 7, and quarterback number 7, was played in the 6+6+6th state. as in the Antichrist, and was the 7 plus 7th semi-prime number of days before the election of Pope Francis, the Antichrist, as in 666. I believe it is 38, the 14th semi-prime number, a number that is divisible by only two other prime numbers, which, as I mentioned, God uses. So again, the Super Bowl, that's the Blackout Bowl, was played in the 6 plus 6 plus 6 state, okay? It connects with the menorah game, which connects to the Temple Mount, and the Antichrist will be on the Temple Mount, Pope Francis. Okay, and that, again, was the 7th super prime number of weeks to the Blackout Bowl. But then the Blackout Bowl, involving the 7x7 team and quarterback number 7, was the 7 plus 7th semi-prime number of days before the election of Pope Francis, the Antichrist, 666. That's amazing. And let's not forget again that the Candlestick Park blackout was 7 plus 7 years exactly to the power outage in San Francisco. Now, in the Blackout Bowl Super Bowl, the San Francisco 49ers, as in 7x7, and quarterback number 7, played the Baltimore Ravens, the team from the 7th state, which, by the way, is more confirmation because the 7th state is Maryland, and that's associated with Catholicism, if I don't mention that later. Maryland was founded by Catholics. There's a Catholic heritage in Maryland, which is why it's called Maryland, because Catholics worship Mary. Anyway, this 7th state Super Bowl was, again, the 7th prime number of weeks after the Menorah Candlestick Park Blackout Bowl. Okay, and it's all about Francis. And Baltimore and Maryland hint at Catholicism and Francis, the Pope. But also, the 7th state connection here also confirms further the 7 plus 7th semi-prime number of days to the election of Pope Francis from this Super Bowl involving the team from the 7th state. That's more confirmation of that. The Blackout Bowl Super Bowl involving the San Francisco 49ers, as in 7x7, and quarterback number 7 against the team from the 7th state was 7 years before the San Francisco 49ers, as in 7x7, would play again in the Super Bowl in 2020. A Super Bowl I've already talked about. The first of the 3 Super Bowls in 6 years. The Blackout Bowl was Super Bowl 47. The word beast is equal to 47 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. So, and the beast is the metaphor in Bible prophecy used to describe the Antichrist. And so the Blackout Bowl involving San Francisco in the 6 plus 6 plus 6th state against the team from the 7th state, Maryland, as in Catholicism, identified the Pope as the beast because it's 47. The Antichrist beast, whose number is 666. This prophecy involving a beast in Revelation chapter 13 is in Revelation chapter 13. Super Bowl 47, as in beast, involving San Francisco, was played in the year 13, the year that Pope Francis was elected Pope on the date 3/13 in the year 13. Okay, because the beast is in Revelation 13, which is why the 47th Super Bowl was in the year 13. Because 47 equals beast. Which makes this more confirmation of Pope Francis being the Antichrist beast. Now, the reason for Francis's election on the date 313, in the year 13, is that Rome converted to Catholicism in the year 313 AD. And Roman Catholicism is, like I said, Christianity mixed with pagan religion. So back to what I was saying. So now that I've finished this paragraph, now I can say what I wanted to say and finish what I was saying earlier about Matthew 16:18. It is the verse that the entire Catholic religion hinges on. In other words, there's no debate. There's no disputing this. The Catholic religion is not true unless the Catholic interpretation of this one verse is correct, which it isn't, and I'll prove it. Catholics claim to have the authority to make up all of this pagan religion on top of the Bible because they claim that popes are descended of Peter, and they claim that Jesus said that he would build his church on Peter. In Matthew 16:18, Jesus had asked the disciples, who do they think he is? Peter was the first to say out loud that Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ. To which Jesus responded by saying, Simon, your name is Peter. He renamed Simon Peter. And then he said, on this truth, on this rock of truth, I will build my church. Jesus said, on this rock I will build my church. What he said in Greek was, Simon, your name is Petros. And upon this Petra, I will build my church. Those are two distinct words in the Greek language. The masculine and feminine version of this word. Petros, the masculine word, refers to a rock or a stone. In the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. Jesus said, Simon, you are Petros, and on this Petra I will build my church. Petra, the feminine version of this word, means bedrock, which makes sense because one builds a structure, a building, a metaphorical building, on bedrock. Jesus did not say that he was going to build his church on a man. That's blasphemy. And anyone who understands the Bible and the true nature of man knows that man is by nature corrupt and becomes more corrupt with time. Which is why the Catholic Church, led by a hierarchy of men, has become more corrupt with time. Okay, so the truth, the rock, the Petra, the bedrock that Jesus said he was going to build his church on, was the truth that Peter had just stated for the first time, that Jesus is the Christ. In other words, Jesus was saying he was going to build his church on the truth that he is the Christ, not Peter. And the so-called descendants of Peter do not have the authority to make up new religion on top of the Bible. They simply don't have that authority. If you want to follow a man-made religion, go ahead. But that's the thing that God hates the most in the Bible. I'll be clear. I'll say this clearly. God absolutely hates Roman Catholicism. That said, God does not hate Catholics. And I don't hate Catholics. And I'm not saying that Catholics won't be saved. I don't have the authority to say that anyway. Except God did give us the keys to warn people. Anyway, if a Catholic is saved, it'll be in spite of their Catholicism, not because of it. And so anyway, that's how Roman Catholicism isn't true, because their interpretation of Matthew 16:18 isn't true. In Bible prophecy, it is stated that the Antichrist will seek to change times and the laws. In the last days prior to April 1st, in the days prior to April 1st, 2018, a rumor went viral that Pope Francis would use a power that popes have to change the law regarding the date of April Fool's Day on April 1st, 2018, because it coincided with Easter Sunday that year. Okay, so if you didn't know, April Fool's Day is a Catholic date. It's a Catholic holiday. It goes back to Rome, when the calendar, the new year was changed from the 1st of April to the 1st of January. That's why it's a Roman Catholic date. Anyway, so the leaders of Rome are popes, and so they have the authority, I guess, to change dates and whatever. I mean, in other words, April Fool's Day has nothing to do with Christianity, but it's a part of the Catholic religion. This is one example of how Catholicism isn't Christianity, right? Anyway, there was a rumor that went viral that the Pope was going to change the date of April Fool's Day because it coincided with Easter Sunday. Now, April 1st, 2018 was exactly 6,666 days after another viral rumor about the end of civilization due to the Y2K computer issue that regarded the changing of the date from December 31st, 1999 to January 1st, 2000. So if you recall, if you are old enough to remember, there was a big deal at the time regarding, and there was a lot of people worried. I mean, everyone was kind of concerned. Everyone. That's why it was the huge news story in the latter half of 1999. Because people didn't really know how the computers would respond when the date changed over into the year 2000. And so there was all this speculation that computers would fail, there would be power outages, planes would fall from the sky, etc. It was called the Y2K scare, the year 2000 scare, okay? But for symbolic purposes, what that was all about was the changing of a date. Bible prophecy says that the Antichrist will seek to change the times and the laws. In other words, the official dates of things, etc. Or rather, the official dates of things is symbolic of this. The thing is that this Y2K scare, changing of the date, was exactly 6,666 days before this rumor of changing the date by the Antichrist, Pope Francis. Because of April Fool's Day coinciding with Easter Sunday. In other words, this identifies Pope Francis as the Antichrist because of the 6,660 days connection. Now, in Bible prophecy, it is stated that the bottomless pit that is filled with demons will be opened with a key. Okay, in Bible prophecy, it is stated that the bottomless pit that is filled with demons will be opened with a key. The symbol of the Vatican is keys. The word key is equal to 41 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2 has the word key equal 41. 41 is the 13th prime number, and Pope Francis is the beast that is described in Revelation chapter 13, and he was elected on the date 3/13 in the year 13. The date that the Pope was rumored to change using Vatican law was the date 4/1 in 2018. the date 41 hints at 41 and the word key, which will be used to open the bottomless pit to the demons, who incidentally will resurrect through demonic power Pope Francis. Okay, so the date 41, this rumored date of changing the date in the law, right? Using the law, Easter Sunday. This 41 date in 2018, this big prophetic date that identified Pope Francis as the Antichrist, as I explained at the beginning of this paragraph, this date 41, which hints at key as in the Vatican, in 2018 is exactly 410, as in 41, weeks before the predicted win for San Francisco, as in Pope Francis, in the Super Bowl in San Francisco. That's amazing beyond words. Because this 4-1 prophetic sign was recognized prior to the date. I knew in February or March or whatever in 2018, because of this prophecy, that it connected with the Y2K changing of the date with 6,666 days. Actually, I think back in those days, I just fooled around with stuff. These days, I don't have time to fool around with stuff like that, and I just know too much, and God leads with the Holy Spirit too much. But back in those days, I mean, obviously it was the Holy Spirit as well, but back in those days, what I did was I just subtracted 6,666 days to see what would happen. And that gave the Y2K scare date, the changing of the date, which was mind-boggling. Well, anyway, in other words, this was a sign 7 years ago that I knew at the time. And now we can see that it's being used by God to connect it with 410 weeks to this predicted win of San Francisco in San Francisco. Because 410 hints at 41 and the date 41, and that's because 41 hints at key, the symbol of the Vatican. And the key will open the bottomless pit to demons who will raise Pope Francis from the dead. It's amazing. Now, also, 4-1 in 2018 was exactly 49 years after the decree in the Israeli Knesset to rebuild Jerusalem, which was a prophetic parallel with the decree to rebuild Jerusalem in Daniel chapter 9, which I explained earlier. This 49 years connection involving Pope Francis hints at the San Francisco 49ers. And again, Pope Francis will be on the Temple Mount in East Jerusalem, making Jerusalem an international city, the biggest sin, transgression against God described in Bible prophecy for which the nations of the world will be judged and destroyed. Okay, Pope Francis will be a part of that whole thing on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And so this big Pope Francis date, Easter Sunday, 2018, which connected with the Y2K scare date, which identified him as the Antichrist from Daniel chapter 7. We get this connection, profound connection from the date 4-1 with the 410 weeks to the San Francisco 49ers predicted win in San Francisco. But also, speaking of 49ers, this date is 49 years exactly after the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, the extremely prophetic decree to rebuild Jerusalem on April 1st, 1969. Stunning, this whole paragraph here. Wow. Do you think that I came up with this all on my own? And therefore, yeah, it's just a coincidence that the 49ers will win the Super Bowl when they do win? You think that this is a coincidence? Don't be the fool. The number 117 symbolizes the Roman Empire. As the year, and this is because the year that the Roman Empire reached its maximum expansion geographically before contracting was 117 AD. Also, the number 117 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist, as the phrase, "let it divide," in Hebrew in Genesis chapter 1 is equal to 117 in Hebrew gematria. As well, the middle dividing chapter of the Bible in Psalms 100 is Psalms 117. So let it divide equals 117. This creation verse, the middle chapter, Psalms 117, not a coincidence, it's the dividing chapter of the Bible. And also the eclipse, the prophetic eclipse in 2017 that divided the nation of America geographically, as in the division of the Roman Empire geographically. This eclipse peaked over St. Louis, the major city, at 1:17 p.m., which hints at 117. Division, let it divide. 117 is equal to 9 times 13. The San Francisco 49ers, as in Pope Francis, are predicted to win the Super Bowl 9 months and 13 days after the prophetic funeral for Pope Francis at the Vatican in Rome. So God uses this, pairings of 9 and 13 to hint at this 117 prophetic number. Okay? In Bible prophecy, it is a key that will open the bottomless pit. The San Francisco 49ers are predicted to win their 6th Super Bowl in Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco, exactly the 6th super semi-prime number of days after Pope Francis was elected Pope. Okay? Now, I forget what number that is, but I think it's like 12,000 and something. Okay? But it is the 6th super semi-prime number of days. Okay? In other words, the total number of days is the semi-prime number of days of something, which in turn is the semi-prime number of days of something, which is in turn the semi-prime number of days of something. I could go through it with you, but it's not necessary. You get my idea here. Now, but again, we are talking about the San Francisco 49ers' 6th Super Bowl win in Super Bowl 60. Okay, their 3rd win in 6 years, their 3rd Super Bowl in 6 years. Anyway, it's a bunch of sixes. And then anyway, the day that Pope Francis was elected connects with the number 6, straightforwardly, to the predicted San Francisco 49ers win in Super Bowl 60. And so you would think that somehow the symbolic date of Pope Francis, the date he was elected, would connect with the San Francisco 49ers predicted win in San Francisco. You would think that the two dates would connect. And they do, with the number 6. It's amazing beyond words. Now, God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. Pope Francis is the beast that is described in Revelation chapter 13. San Francisco is predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco, the 13th plus 13th plus 13th super semi-prime number of days after Pope Francis was elected Pope on the date 3/13 in the year 13. Okay? So in other words, the 6th semi-prime number is 13, which means that we're getting, 13 is the, correction. The 6th semi-prime number is 15, and the 15th semi-prime number is 39, which is 13 plus 13 plus 13. Okay? So that makes this, so if it's super, this would be super, not super. Anyway, San Francisco is predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco, the 13th plus 13th plus 13th super semi-prime number of days after Pope Francis was elected Pope on the date 313 and 13, okay? Because of Revelation chapter 13 and the beast. The date 313 hints at 13 plus 13 plus 13th super semi-prime number of days. Revelation 9:11 symbolizes the opening of the bottomless pit with a key in Bible prophecy. San Francisco is predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco, the 119th super semi-prime number of days after the election of Pope Francis. And 119th hints at Revelation 9:11. And I know that because of God's signs. Don't need to prove that here. I've been studying his big picture of signs from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 7 years. Anyway, yeah, that's definitely how it works. And 119 symbolizes Revelation 9:11, which is relevant because of the key that opens the bottomless pit from which the demons will rise and then raise Pope Francis from the dead. Now, just to be one detail here, and again, we have another connection to Pope Francis's election. We have, in other words, in this paragraph, 3 ways in which the election of Pope Francis profoundly connects to this predicted win for San Francisco in San Francisco. Can it be any more clear that San Francisco hints at Pope Francis? And can it be any more clear that Pope Francis is the Antichrist? No, it cannot. Okay? Now, one little detail, I think what the problem is that this is 6 times super. So it's super, semi-prime number of days. Anyway, so last paragraph here, the area code for San Francisco is 415, or 415, I should say. Exactly 415 months after the World Series earthquake in San Francisco was the date May 17th, 2024. Now, on this date, the number 1 golfer was charged with 4 crimes in the 15th state. And also, he was charged with 4 crimes in the 15th state. Also, he then, after being charged with 4 crimes, went on to play his round of golf, in which he tied for 4th, in which he had 5 under par, which tied him for 4th. So the number 1 golfer had 5 under par and tied for 4th. There was another 415. There was these multiple ways in which this prophetic sign involving the golfer hinted at Pope Francis, or rather the 415 months connection to the San Francisco earthquake. And by the way, this date was recognized ahead of time, so we were expecting such things. And then sure enough, they happened. Now, the thing too is that the golfer, what's relevant here, the golf course was in Valhalla. The name of the golf course was Valhalla, or the town was Valhalla, or maybe both, which is the Nordic religion for hell. So the underworld, hell, is Valhalla, which is of course relevant to the Pope, but also the bottomless pit, which will use a key, which will be opened with a key. Now the name of this golfer, the number 1 golfer that got charged with these crimes as he was driving his car into the tournament that day, okay, because he disregarded the instructions of a police officer directing traffic after someone had died and went to hell, Valhalla, after being struck by a bus. So in the confusion, the number 1 golfer, worried that he was going to be late for his round of golf, so the story goes, he was acquitted, so we don't know. Maybe he was correct and the police officer was wrong. But anyway, he got charged. But anyway, he was the number 1 golfer, finished his round, 5 under par, tied for 4th, 415. It was also 4 crimes in the 15th state, etc. Anyway, his name, and this is Valhalla again, but his name, the golfer's name, the number 1 golfer's name, is Scott Scheffler. The name Scheffler means bailiff. In, I think it's the Welsh language. But bailiff means keys, which is the symbol of the Vatican. And Pope Francis was the Pope at the time in the Vatican. And this is connected with the San Francisco earthquake that interrupted the World Series, the championship for baseball. This was one of the golf game that he was attending was part of one of the PGA Championship or something. It was one of the four Masters, so it was the equivalent of a championship. Okay, and his name means keys. It's amazing, right? Now it was also it was Scott Scheffler. And it was it also connected. It was just a few days after, it connected prophetically to it, the collapse of the Scott Francis Key Bridge. The bridge being the bridge that the demons will cross over from the demonic realm into the earthly realm after the key opens it. So Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed when the ship hit it in Baltimore. Maryland, Catholicism, Francis, as in Francis Key or Francis Scott Key Bridge, right? Francis, Pope Francis, Key as in Keys, Vatican, you get the idea here, right? Okay. Now, what else happened on this date was the big Pope Francis sign. Because on this day, Pope Francis declared a new power for the Pope. Which was that? Only the Pope has the authority now to declare supernatural phenomena, such as Mary apparitions, as in Maryland, with the bridge. Okay? So only the Pope can declare them as being authentic. That's convenient because what's coming? There's going to be a massive Mary apparition on March 22nd, 2029 that will precede the resurrection of Pope Francis. This Mary apparition will be on the beach in Rio de Janeiro. Anyway, also, there'll be all kinds of other stuff when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm that the Pope will have the authority, the sole authority, to declare. Okay? Yes, that's a huge thing. By the way, this is also the day of the release of the trailer for the movie The Substance, in which Demi Moore, who had her big comeback, as in the comeback of Pope Francis and Barack Obama, in her career, after what? After she was exiled from Hollywood for her movie playing a prostitute, as in Pope Francis being the prostitute in Revelation chapter 17. And in the movie, the plot is that she takes an injection and gets rejuvenated, which is why the demons pretending to be aliens will promote the injections that will promise people age reversal and immortality, just like how they've risen Pope Francis from the dead. And of course, the movie about when Demi Moore starred as a prostitute was all about youth and beauty, which the plot of The Substance is about her basically being the prostitute again, her role as a sex symbol in the other movie years later in her big comeback movie. You see all the parallels here, right? Now, and Pope Francis will, of course, as the Antichrist, lead the way in enforcing the mark of the Antichrist, the injections. Now, this declaration issued by Pope Francis on May 17th, 2024, is 90 weeks and 1 + 1 days, which hints at Revelation 9:11, and the key that opens the bottomless pit to the demons, before San Francisco is predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco. So in other words, this was another Pope Francis sign, and it just confirmed that because it connected with the earthquake in San Francisco, the extremely prophetic World Series earthquake, which I won't get into here. And this in turn, with this declaration, on the day of the Scott Scheffler Keys golf sign in Valhalla, on the day of the release of the Substance trailer, on the day of the Pope Francis declaring the sole authority for Mary apparitions and other supernatural phenomena, this day, speaking of demonic supernatural phenomena, is 90 weeks and 1 + 1 days, which ends at Revelation 9:11, with the demons coming out of the bottomless pit, before San Francisco is predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco. This is merely scratching the surface of the reasons for how this prediction is known in advance. For more information, please visit odyssey.com, spelled ODYSEE.com, or rumble.com video channels named Asteroid Prediction. And also read the website www.trumpprediction.com. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, "Jesus loves you," unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.